Alright guys, HyDra again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Nadeshot is the owner of the Los Angeles Thieves, potentially the best team in the CDL right now, but a potential chief rival for that team was meant to be this season, the Cloud9 New York, the New York Subliners roster that made the World Championship final last year. They won it the year before that, and they still won an event last season with Simp on their roster. However, major changes have gone down within the organization. They're no longer the Subliners, they're now Cloud9. Simp is the only member to be staying, and Nadeshot believes that the team is simply not capable, from a chemistry point of view, of putting up the fight that they need to against the rest of the league. This is interesting given that on paper they are one of the biggest friendship teams in the league. Does Nadeshot though have a point about Simp's personality with respect to the rest of the team? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, just from Clay real quick, of course, he apparently got unwell on his final day in the offices with the squad, so hopefully everyone in the Falcons camp has been okay over the brief Christmas break, because they've got to get back to the grind. They've started the league 0-4. They've won 2 maps so far this season, Falcons. One was it against Cloud9? I don't know. It was a search and destroy right at the start of the season. They then won a control, famously, against Atlanta FaZe, but FaZe still slammed them apart from that. They, of course, go into the minor at the start of January. Their first game will be against OpTic Texas, so it's a big game to prepare for, and the reality is, if Falcons come out of Major 1 with 0 CDL points on the board, it's a difficult argument to say that, you know, you've got to stick with this roster for the very long term. They've shown some promise in glimpses so far, but I still think for Clay and the rest of the team, they've got to show relatively quickly that this team of 4 can, you know, deliver some performance, because, you know, we've heard it before from the likes of Kenny that you see what the team is capable of very shortly after the team is formed. And I'm sure that Clay has kind of seen, or at least has a mind's eye in terms of what the ceiling of that roster of 4 actually is. And that's something you'll be keeping in mind. Thought this is funny. I'm guessing Dashy was fishing for that Christmas or New Year's bonus or something from Hex, but I don't know. I thought that was kind of good to look for. But we'll have a talk about Nadeshot and his perspective on a couple of the teams at the moment. Of course, he was on the inner circle discussing Advanced Warfare, the World Championship that year, his retirement, of course, from professional play that season. I know there was lots of talk during this episode actually about just how eloquent Nadeshot appears. Not even appears, he actually, he just straight up is, like how well he speaks compared to maybe the majority of pro players. I don't think that should be a massive surprise. It's not like Nadeshot went through any crazy formal education, but he's gone through an education process because he's been running a business for the last several years, dealing with proper business people, and you know, that'll certainly fix you up quick, I guess. And look, Nadeshot knows what he's doing, and he also owns 100 Thieves, Los Angeles Thieves, therefore under that umbrella, and this season they are expected to be a serious contending roster, with OpTic going through more internal drama with Predgon, Hook is in. Of course, we discussed yesterday how Scump and potentially Formal were approached to at least sub into that role. That would unlikely have ever been a longer term fix, and I think Hook makes an awful lot of sense. But still, the Champ's Curse has seemingly come for OpTic Texas already. The Champ's Curse came for the New York Subliners just a couple of weeks after they won the World Championship. They dropped Priestahh for Sib. They made a change. If you look back at last season, 2024, you could argue the change was justified. Sib played very well towards the end of the year. The team won an event at Major 4. They made the grand finals again of the World Championship. Nowhere near the success they had the previous season with Priestahh, but it's not like Priestahh individually had a good season on the Boston Breach, and that is seemingly continuing into this year with the way things look so far on the Gentlemates team. But we know that Sib can be a bit of a controversial character. Some players get along with him very well, but it does seem like he isn't the easiest teammate on some level, and we saw that towards the end of his tenure with Subliners last year. With the exception of HyDra, Sib was their best player, but of course he was the player that got dropped from the team. Initially, it was Sib gone at the end of August. This is of course just shortly after the Esports World Cup concluded, and Sib, and of course, was gone, and then Skyz, Kismet, and HyDra were set to stay. But then when HyDra was poached by the Los Angeles Thieves, that then left Cloud9 in a position where they needed to choose to either keep Kiz and Skyz or to build around Sib. And a lot of the discussion was at the time that, look, Sib's the most talented player on the roster, they should stick by him, which eventually is what they decided to go on to do. But of course, if you look at his performances so far this season, you wouldn't necessarily say for sure that's the greatest idea. But at the end of the day, it's not like Sib can't play the game anymore and can't shoot straight. Yes, he has the lowest KD in the entire league, apart from King of Body right now, with something like a 0.73, which is shocking for Sib, and I'm sure that will turn around over time. Maybe you could argue he's just not as good at this game as at the most previous couple of games, which, you know, maybe is justifiable as well. It's a matter of perspective. The reality is that Sib's performance being at a 0.73 KD in the 4 matches that he's played so far this season has a lot to do with the way the team is working as it stands. And the team has started 1-3 this season, Cloud9, and there's obviously been a lot of discussion on what might need to change at Cloud9 if that team wants to get better. Of course, Sib was involved in some drama with the Cloud9 team as well, or the New York team as they kind of were at the time. Well, to be fair, I guess at the World Cup they represented Cloud9. But the point being that he said, oh, they were getting on at 9 a.m. every day, grinding until 9 p.m. Then he clarified and said, oh, well, that wasn't quite true. Respect to those guys. Sib was then asked the question when all of this was resolved, is there any bad blood between you and the Cloud9 boys? And he said, oh, no, there's no bad blood from my side to them. But he didn't rule out the possibility of them thinking of him a certain way after everything that went down, especially his critique on, you know, what he said about New York, like, oh, they think they know how to win, this type of stuff, but they've only won this amount and all this stuff. Now, Sib's a very talented player, but I think there are certain bridges that Sib is not necessarily burning, but certainly not maintaining, as it were, right? With certain individuals. Obviously, this is a clip from a month and a bit ago now where Sib was crashing out on Hook and ProLoot and those guys, and maybe Sib's good enough to back up some of his claims at some point. But obviously, that's not been the case so far this season. So wanted to share what Nadeshot had to say on this, because he was talking about the Cloud9 team. They've started off 1-3. They went to the K-Sun Invitational 50k tournament a while ago. They came dead last at that one, behind Thieves, OpTic, and of course FaZe at that time. And, you know, even FaZe, they're not looking so good right now, but at that tournament a while ago, Cloud9 were the weakest team there on paper. And sure, their first weekends, they played Thieves, they played OpTic, they lost both of those series, there was potentially ping problems, and they've looked better since then. But the reality is they've still not been at the level that Cloud9 want to be at, because, you know, they're trying to be 4th best bare minimum. Right now, you can very much argue they're nowhere near that point of view when you've got teams like, obviously, Toronto, you've got teams like Ravens, even maybe a team like Boston, for example, getting in the mix to be 4th, 5th, 6th, that kind of ballpark. Cloud9, difficult to say whether they're there or not. So Nadeshot kind of gives his thoughts on Sib and the fact that he benefits from a team, which I think is absolutely true when, you know, the vibes are good. He's like a vibe guy. He needs teammates similar to him. I can't imagine the Cloud9 roster all sitting together at a bar. Now, whether you think Nadeshot's read on this is fair, given the way that Cloud9 have actually structured their team this season, is another question. But I think part of what he says is probably true.
Sib been struggling this year. Underrated part of roster construction nowadays, in my opinion, is probably how well the players get along. I think nowadays in the CDL era, you might have some team owners or some GMs that try to construct rosters off of talent, which is, you know, obviously what you want to do for the most part. But I feel like a player like Sib is probably like a vibe type of guy. He needs people that culturally are similar to him in the way that he acts, the way that he talks, the way that he carries himself. When I look at the Cloud9 roster, kind of reminds me of like a NBA team, bro, where you got a 20-year league veteran and a 3-year hot off their freshman, sophomore year player. It's like Kremp, Mack, Attach, and Sib. I don't know if I'd ever see those 4 players sitting at the bar together. I don't know. That might just be a Hail Mary, but I think Sib is a good player, but I feel like a player like that shines when everybody on the team, I don't know. It makes sense in my head. I could be completely wrong, but it's just a weird assortment of players in my opinion. But they look good.
So even from when Sib first came onto the scene, we're talking back in Modern Warfare 19 when he was FaZe's substitute, he was getting into drama for the words that he said towards the OpTic fans in his chat at the time, and even to the present day. You know, this was the start of November when Shotzzy was taking him hostage and trash talking his team and all this stuff. And look, a player that I think is reasonably well liked by some of the community, but certainly some players don't get along with him so well, and that's probably fine if you're, you know, good enough to back it up. The problem that even the likes of Crimsix had towards the end of his career was that he burnt so many bridges with so many players, even as the greatest ever, that, you know, when he wasn't the best performing player in his role in the entire league anymore. There were certain teammates that didn't even want to play with him, which seemed remarkable. But it is an important aspect of the game. Nadeshot even mentioned it himself and said the other day, like, the most important thing that affects careers is maintaining these relationships with other players. Now, I don't think Sib is necessarily going out of his way to cause any problems there, but it is interesting what his perception, Nadeshot, on the Cloud9 team, certainly compared to his own team. Now, the interesting thing about this to me is that on paper, this should be a great vibey team for Sib. I mean, Attach and Sib, they get along very well. You know, if you ranked the teams in order of like friendship league teams, this would be near the top on paper. That's not necessarily to discredit the team because, you know, friendship teams do succeed and, you know, it tends to be a good idea. But they've got aBeZy, the head coach, great friends with Attach, of course, for many a year, teamed with Sib before on the Seattle Surge and with Mack, who seemingly Sib wanted along as well. That's the interesting thing about this perception from Nadeshot is that Sib effectively built this team on some level, right? That was kind of true because he was the only man left. And, you know, I imagine they were relying on Sib to put some of these pieces together. He wanted, I guess, Attach as his AR duo. He wanted aBeZy as the coach. That was locked in. They obviously talked with Nero about getting him on the SMG. That was rumoured. They eventually decided not to do that and went for Mack instead. And then Kremp is, I wouldn't say like the odd one out, precisely because he does seem like he gets along quite well with these guys. And the content we've seen from them behind the scenes has been, you know, pretty promising from a chemistry point of view. Would these guys go to the bar together and have a drink? I mean, you know, I don't really see why not necessarily. So I'm not sure I fully agree with Nadeshot's perspective. Like, I agree with what he means about Sib as a player. I actually think this team on paper should tick some of those boxes, maybe more than Nadeshot feels like it does. But look, difficult to argue with the results they've had at the end of the day. And I guess this is the point, isn't it? That, you know, the friendship stuff and whatever outside of the game stuff, it might still be good, but it doesn't matter if individually you're just not performing and it's not working out so far. I mean, here's Sib's numbers, a 0.73 so far this season. Mack has been their best performer, I would say, on average so far. The numbers certainly indicate it, and the eye test would indicate exactly that as well. So they've won a single series against the Rocker. They went 2 up on the Ravens, to be fair, then they got reverse swept, and by the time Ravens started playing well, it wasn't even especially close, I would say. So, yeah, what do you guys think about this Cloud9 team? Where do they go from here? Because they were one of the rosters I was looking at. If things don't go to plan, you know, what sort of changes might they look at? The reality is that Seattle Surge team of the last few years, which they are quite similar to on some level with Sib and Mack and aBeZy over there, they never made any changes. They really tried not to. They kept, you know, Mack in the team when he was playing badly. They could have brought in Gwyn. They never did. But of course, at the time they had Pred, and, you know, Kremp isn't quite Pred. So I think that's the difficulty for Cloud9. This roster, when it was formed, it's got some firepower, but they need the chemistry to really elevate them. It doesn't really feel like either are firing on all cylinders right now. So is Nadeshot's perspective fair enough? Into your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, what the f are you doing at raves anyways? Hard drugs?
I like the music.
Hard drugs.
Nah, you like the hard drugs.
You know what he's doing at those
definitely
raves, bro.
don't.
Yeah.
You know what he's doing.
Yeah, hold up, bro. What are you doing? You're,
Locked out there.
you're looking at the shirtless dudes, aren't you?
I got a
I know about
girlfriend,
you.
bro.
Ah, he's quiet. We got him.
I'm just trying to think of a comeback.
Well, come here,
for this-
boys. We got them.
I'm just trying to think of a comeback for this fat so in my ear, but I can't think of one. You're tweaking the fuck out.
Brother, are you tweaking?
You're tweaking out, and when I said,
Hold on, Chris, hold on,
"Come here to
Chris."
the game, you called me a fat ass, so I started taking personals.
Well, because you are. Like, what do you want me to say?
That's fine, and you are also
Right,
a
like-
failure. you also made a retirement video for a career that never was a thing. You were never a thing.
He just keeps telling him he retired from a career that was never a thing. That's like me quitting GameStop. I never worked there, is what Haggy's saying. That's insane.
Yeah, you want to be weird? I will be
Nobody
weird.
likes you.
That's fine.
Nobody likes you, bro.
That's fine. I will be
Low
weird.
bubbles, you're fucking sad as fuck. You're sad.
Oh,
as
Listen,
fuck.
I don't like to sit there and take personals on anyone. But as soon as you come at me, I'm gonna tell you.
Dude, this is crazy.
Bro, I'm not a mean
You should cry
person.
like a
bro.
little bitch.
You
You should
should.
cry like a little bitch.
You should.
Be
You
right
should
people
care.
to get where you're at, brother. You're a fucking weirdo.
Yeah, I meat rode my whole career.
Yeah, if I was Sib or any other pro, you'd fucking shut your mouth like a good bitch you are, like a fucking good little girl. You're a fucking bitch.
I mean,
You're a
if
good
you know
bitch.
if
You're
you know
good- you're a good
anything
bitch.
about about my career, you would know.
In fucking person, I'll beat
Oh,
the fuck out of
Duarte,
you.
you're a good little
you're so
bitch.
mad. You're so mad.
I am. You're fucking drunk.
I mean, it has nothing to do with
brother.
it. Listen, you
It
can say and do whatever you want.
You're
I'm
listening
just
to your girl
letting
over
you
here,
know.
bro. Grip up, you fucking blue dick, fucking
Now
cock.
you're just making up shit to like try to win an
I'm
argument.
not, you're a bitch. You're a bitch. I'm not
Like-
making anything up.
Like I'm actually spitting facts. You know what I'm saying?
I'm spitting,
Guys,
brother. I'm
come
sit there,
on,
bro.
it's
What?
Christmas.
What fact that I'm spitting? It's
Rain
not Christmas
check.
anymore. I can go rogue. You're a bitch. You need to fucking stop being a bitch. You need to fucking grip
Oh,
up.
you're
and
so
fucking
salty,
shitty ass
man.
nigga.
You're
Not
so
salty, you're a
salty,
bitch.
bro.
You need to learn how to fucking treat people
Yo,
with
thanks for the
respect.
gifted
Stop fucking
subs,
bitching.
boys.
Bro, when does this
Appreciate the
end?
love.